pop that on. So welcome to today's workshop, everyone who's here and everyone who's joining us on the recording later on. Today we're going to be covering mind mapping, so a tool that is very helpful for a number of different things, whether that is planning essays, during exams, during research, and it's particularly a great tool for students who are visual learners, and I'm a visual learner and I don't think I used this tool enough when I was studying, so it's something that I'm really passionate about. And the reason we're doing it so early in the trimester is because it is something that you can be using throughout the whole trimester when you're doing your essays, when you're doing continuous assessment. So it is very useful, and then it will bring you right up until exam time when you can start using it there as well. So in today's workshop, we are going to be covering what is a mind map, what are the key functions of a mind map, how to use the mind map, what benefits you might find with it, and how you might do it. Should you be doing it on paper? Should you be using digitally? So a few options for you to consider. So let's get stuck in. So now that I have a picture of a mind map up, I might have a little bit of an aha moment. So this is a mind map. I think back in the day, I think they used to be called spider diagrams quite a bit as well. And I certainly remember using them quite a bit more when I was younger, and slowly through the years, I think in the rush to get things done, I started to neglect the power of the mind map. So it's a visual tool, essentially, and it is a really good way of laying out a complex topic. So sometimes your brain is just running very quickly and it wants to get ideas that are quite complex down in a simple way. And a mind map would be a really good way to do this. As you can see there, it's something that has a lot of colour, it's something that has words, it has connections, it has pictures. A mind map can really suit, you can make it very different depending on your own individual needs and your taste and how you learn. But essentially at its core, it is this visual tool which has a central topic, and then it branches out into subtopics. So if I go to my next slide, we have another mind map here. And as you can see there, how you start a mind map is right in the beginning with this central idea. So where I have the green arrow with the 1 on it. So that might be, the key word out of a question, if it was something like body parts, for instance, and you were breaking it down into, the skeletal system, the circulation system, all of this. And then, when you break off the skeletal system, you might have bone and ligaments and so on. So you do start with your central idea, and then you go to what I have labeled here as number 2, your first branches. So they're kind of your headings. If this was going to be an essay, maybe they would be the main topic of each PowerPoint. And then you go off to your second branches, which I labelled here as number 3. And you can see that beyond the first branch, you can break those ideas down a little bit more. So for instance, on the think and feel secondary branch, that's broken down into worries, emotions, aspirations, thoughts, and concerns. So you're kind of giving yourself a little bit more of a depth when you go out into those second branches, and you can continue to keep branching off mind maps as much as you want. I think a lot of the diagrams and examples show like this, that there's kind of a first and second branch, but you can keep branching off as you dig down deeper into thoughts. But it all starts, I suppose, with that central topic. So mind maps traditionally have connections, so they're those branches, so everything is connected to at least one other thing. And that is very important to how they work, as those connections are really important in thinking and memory. So a lot of students, what they might do instead of a mind map is have lists of things. So they start writing down quite a rigid list of ideas. And those lists are actually very hard for us to create memory around. But when we have connections, when you think about it, that's how our brain often works, and memory works in our brain is it's connecting things. And even if you think about sometimes, you'll be having a conversation about somebody or with somebody about something, and suddenly you remember something else because there's a connection there in your brain to that next thing. So this is really important, that you can then remember different things based on connections. That's how mind maps can actually work as study tools. Because then, for instance, if you can remember maybe the five first branches that are shown here, then you can start to remember the second branches as well. And really interestingly, in traditionally in mind maps, all of the lines are curved, and the kind of founding father of mind maps believes that's very important because it's the curved line that will allow you to remember something and to kind of flow with it a little bit better. So feel free to get very creative when you're drawing your mind maps and make those lines as curvy as you like. So mind maps really are here to help you organize your ideas by linking them together and seeing how they fit in with one another. It's then that you can start to see relationships between things. So sometimes, you can have a lot of thoughts on how you want things you might want to put into an essay, a lot of ideas, but you don't know how to link them up. And that's the beauty of a mind map. It's something that's very organic, and then you can start to see the connections and the relationship between ideas and start to form points based on that. So they are very useful in that way, for how, when you're planning answers and when you're planning maybe a research question or something like that, so that you can kind of bring related ideas together into a similar point. And I know, sometimes when you're writing an essay, sometimes you can just have this one point that you really want to include, but you don't know where to include it. And that's why a mind map can be so brilliant, because it allows you to organize those thoughts, to visually see them, and to start to bring them together. And I think here is a really good example of, you can see in this mind map there's loads of different pictures, and it's so important to remember that you don't need to be putting down words for everything. A picture can, paint those words for you. And I think that can be a little bit tricky sometimes to begin with for some people, but it's really important that you're allowing your thoughts to flow in different ways. So what are the benefits of a mind map? Well, you can really quickly get an overview of a topic. So again, instead of maybe making lists, you can start to bring together a whole topic in a very, holistic way, that you can really clearly see all of the aspects of that topic. So say, for instance, if you are reviewing a module at the end, and when you're doing modules and, maybe every week is a different topic, it can be kind of hard to bring those all together and see the relationships between those topics. So it can be really great to make a mind map of the module. So in that case, at the center of the mind map, you'd have something like introduction to, I keep going for biology, but let's do it like introduction to physiology or something, and then all the different topics you covered over the weeks, and branched out to what those core kind of top topics were within those topics. And you can start to link them up. Maybe that will allow you to see that, maybe an exam question could ask a couple of topics together, and you start to kind of think in that way of how you could link different topics together, and that might help you prepare. Or if you were writing an essay, maybe there would be a very interesting topic that you could link up with another to bring together for a bit more of a detailed answer. With mind maps, then another benefit is that they're much easier to memorize, particularly when there's less text. So I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but sometimes you just feel like I can just see everything. I can remember the page that I learned it off. I just can't really remember what it was. But as we described, like mind maps are literally structured to help memory with those like curvy lines and connections. Memory is at their core, really. But they also allow you to have all of the information, the complete overview of a topic on one page. And it's something you can almost visualize then in your mind's eye, maybe when you need it for an exam or something. And again, you can see the connections between topics. You can see, you know, sometimes it can be very useful to even be like, I remember that there were 4 sub branches, there are 4 things I needed to talk about when I'm talking about this topic. So that can be really helpful as well for memory. They're very useful for visual learners. So a good few people, that I meet over the year, over, the last trimester would say I'm a real visual learner. And sometimes lists of text can be really tricky then. There's just nothing to kind of catch the attention, there's nothing to allow that connection. So as you can imagine, particularly if you add some pictures and things like that, colour, that kind of dynamic, organic way of structuring a mind map for a person who's a visual learner, that can be very useful. If you're not sure if you're a visual learner, I covered it in I think in my revision workshop last trimester, which is available on the Brightspace as well. And even you can have a quick Google on things like, what kind of learner am I? So you might be an audio learner or a visual learner. Or conversational learner, but it might be worth checking into it and seeing maybe if this would be something that would be particularly useful for you. And I think one of the real benefits of the mind map is this last one here, that they can grow organically as things come to mind. So for instance, if you write out your notes on a topic on, an A4 piece of paper, and then new ideas start coming to mind, the way you're kind of arrows off, you're trying to squeeze it in to this piece of paper, which, you've already moved on to the next topic maybe, and there's no space back on point 1 to put something in. With the mind map, you can keep growing them as you learn new things. So maybe when you start writing an essay, you'd write a basic mind map on the topics you've covered in class. And then when you go and you do your reading, from all those topics, you're learning new things. So you just keep adding in branches and arrows and pictures and things like that to develop those mind maps. And you've got the space, and you've got the space in all directions almost to add in those things. So it can be very useful, and maybe you'll have a new secondary branch coming off your core idea. Maybe you'll continue to just develop other ideas a little bit deeper as you do your research. So what are the functions of a mind map? And I've highlighted 4 main functions here. They can be used in studying, in brainstorming, in group work, and in research. So I think I've talked a lot about studying and a lot about maybe brainstorming, but I really want to focus in then as well on group work and research to know that there's actually a really wide variety of things you can be using in mind maps. So I feel like there's not a week that goes by that you couldn't be using mind maps. So for instance, in studying, as I've been saying, you might use it for preparing for an essay or an exam, and you just add what you know to the mind map, you develop off those ideas, and it might give you a really good reference point to go back to and kind of say, yes, I've covered all of these different things, I'm happy that they're all in there. It's a bit of a plan for an essay or an exam, and a real tool for how you're studying it. You can use it for brainstorming. So like I was saying, it's so organic that you can be adding ideas that it's really good for brainstorming. And the whole idea is that you're kind of not feeling very rigid in when you're doing a mind map. So you might put something onto the mind map. Maybe you'll never make it into the essay, but you're just developing out ideas, and then you can see what you have kind of completely on the page and work with that. Ideally as well, it can be used when you're planning a presentation. So you're kind of, with the presentation, sometimes you don't have very long, maybe you only have 5 minutes to speak. So you're kind of considering what are all the ideas, and then you can narrow them down to the most important topics that you want to cover. and you can use them to develop a brief. So particularly maybe if you work in something like business, or a subject where you're doing a project, a bit of a, you're fulfilling a brief, you could kind of have like an arm for what resources do I have, what do I have to achieve my aim, all these different kind of branches off it of what you have to help you develop your brief. And again, it's just a really good reference point to go back to so that you don't forget that you have certain resources or anything like that when you're doing these projects. Mind maps can be quite nice in group work as well, as kind of, like that first day where you're sitting down with a group of people and everyone's kind of already got their ideas maybe floating around, or you want to start developing ideas as a group. It can be nice to kind of bring a mind map together, and this can be done remotely as well. I'll show you some apps and software in a minute, and you can do that remotely as well. But even if you were maybe in future years when you're back in the room with people, a whiteboard, and start drawing mind maps, different colors, different branches, and just get going. And then it can be kind of easy because everything's maybe separated out into different branches. It can be easier to divide up the tasks, so you can be like, oh, Mary will take this and John will take this branch, things like that, and everything's kind of developed. And then you can all maybe take a picture of that mind map and work off that as you go, or you can have a mind map that you're still editing and you're still adding to as you go and do your research as well. So the final thing there is research. So if you're maybe completing a bit of a project, you can first of all use a mind map just to figure out what you know. So sometimes when you're going into research, it's something that you're interested in, but obviously you're going to be developing a lot of knowledge on, and it can be really great to just take stock of what you know. So a quick mind map on what you know, or it can be really good for what you don't know. So what you need to find out, where do you need to be going, what would you love to include but you don't have information on at the moment. So that can be very helpful. You can add ideas as you do your research then. So like I was saying, very dynamic, very organic. So as you go, you can make sure you're including those. And you can help it then structure your thesis. So theses are very big pieces of writing. So to have kind of a plan in place, like a mind map, is really useful to go back to. So I hope that you guys are a little bit more comfortable now with why you might want to use a mind map, how they could benefit you, what kind of functions they could have, what they kind of look like, and as you can imagine, there are then many ways that you can actually start physically drawing your mind map, whether that is physical on paper or digital. So the big question is, which one might you want to use? Do you want to use it on something on paper or digital better? I suppose, as with most things, there is no better or worse. I personally actually prefer paper because I like the physical process. So that would be where you take out, an A4 page, an A3 page, you draw your central topic at the beginning of at the very center of the page, and you start to just branch off. So it means you can draw in, you can write, you can use colored pens, things like that, and just really allow it to go. And that can be quite nice because then as an idea comes to you, you can just branch off at the side and start adding different things. But there's a whole suite of really great softwares and apps available as well, and doing something digitally definitely comes with some benefits as well. So the first is that you actually have unlimited paper, so in a way, or unlimited size of the page I should say, to draw. So earlier I was saying how frustrating it can be when you're making a list of ideas and you don't have space to add in your new ideas, and that can happen with a paper mind map as well. So the beauty of doing something digitally is that you have this unlimited space. So maybe you start off with a few branches off your mind map, but one branch is the one you really want to follow, and you just keep splitting that and developing and digging deeper. If you're going off in that direction, then that's okay. You can continue to do that and really you know, follow your gut on it and all the rest, and you have this unlimited space. It's also quite nice because they're really easy to edit and move ideas around. So sometimes you might find when you've done a mind map on paper, you're starting to see a relationship between two branches. Maybe you might link them up with an arrow or a branch in itself, but sometimes you might go, I just don't think I broke that up the right way. I actually want to move these ideas around a little bit. And the beauty of doing something with a digital mind map is that you can do that. You can just absolutely move them around, no bother. So that can be really useful as well. Then you can collaborate with other people remotely. So as I was saying, you might be doing a group project and want to use this, and particularly at the moment, it might be the best way to do it would be to use a digital mind mapping software to kind of plan out those answers, or that mind map, excuse me. And you can all be working on it and adding in your own ideas and developing and adding in comments. So it's quite nice sometimes to do that, particularly at the moment that you're getting one mind map all formed, and as people want to add things in, they can. And so what's particularly useful as well about doing a digital one is sometimes you can add in images. So if you're very visual but maybe you don't enjoy drawing, sometimes it can be nice to add in an image or a link to a video or a link to maybe a research paper or something like that, that will really help you develop that thought. And that means that when you go back to that plan, you have all these links structured. So maybe if you're working on one branch and that's going to be one paragraph in an essay, well, you've got all the links you need then attached to the branches as well. So that can be really useful. If you kind of like to get all your ideas out on the page, but a great way to like have something to reference back on with the links. So I suppose if you're doing it with paper, all you need is a piece of paper and some pens, but I do have some software suggestions for if you are doing it digitally. So there is Xmind, which works offline, which can be kind of handy, and it's very good for building up complex maps, but there is a learning curve with it, so it's not as intuitive as some of the others. Google is easy to use. It does create quite simple mind maps, so probably a good place to be starting. You can download your mind map as well, but you only get 3 private maps, and then you can make as many as you want, but they are visible to the public on Google. But unless you're doing something quite private, that might suit you absolutely down to the ground. And then there's MindMeister as well, which is easy to use. It's easy to add links, and as I was saying, that can be really helpful. It does have limited features on the free version. It limits the printing feature, so it really does work best online, and it does limit you to 3 maps for free. So overall, I kind of am a fan of Google, just because I think it's kind of the most open and easy to use as a free service. So I do have a link to that now. And just to say as well, in terms of apps, we'll have some suggestions for apps on the Brightspace afterwards. Um, there are some apps that can do it if you want to do it on your phone. The tricky thing with doing it on an app is that sometimes you're doing that on a much smaller screen. So it's really great to build these on the computer or on the laptop because you have a bigger screen and a bit more space to work with, which can be very handy. And the chances are you're writing and doing essays and doing your study on the computer anyway. So it might be a good place is to use some of these softwares, and you want to Google them and have a look then at how you can set yourself up with them. Please do. So now I'm going to show you